Welcome back. We're on part 3 of episode 58, and it's time to talk about the best WWE Champion of all time tournament. We're wrapping it up here. We're in the semifinals and the wild card, grouping it together. But before we get into round 5 and the wild card itself, let's go over round 4. Now, the results for that were as follows. CM Punk beats John Cena 17 to 13. I was a little bit surprised about this. I thought John Cena would be the guy to knock CM Punk out by probably the same margin as what CM Punk won. So I figured it would be close, but I didn't think that CM Punk would end up getting the win. So you guys proved me wrong. I voted for John Cena though, so that's where we're gonna differ in the next group of matches. But what do you think? Think makes sense for CM Punk over John Cena, or do you think it's kind of like just the popularity vote?
I think it's a little bit of a like a bit of an upset. I didn't think he'd have the shot of moving past Savage. He did. I didn't think he'd beat Cena, and he did. I could say I don't think he's going to move on this next round, but he could too. So, who's to say, right? He certainly is a popular wrestler. I mean, he's my current favorite that the WWE has to offer. So I could see his fan base voting for him. You know,
It's not like it's like
yeah. Yeah. It's not like Sid's moved on this far because he only has half the brain we do. Remember
yeah. Hulk Hogan beats Bret Hart 15 to 11. Not too surprised on that one. I figured it would be a decently close match with Hogan coming out in the end, which makes sense to me because Bret Hart, great champion, but Hulk Hogan just enough better that he deserves to win.
that? Yeah, pretty much like.
Riveting commentary.
Well, yeah. Griffey. It's like Taz all over again. And I'm Tazing this entire segment. Anyway,
Same
um,
talking about.
well, you got to look at it like in terms of like star power and whatnot. Like Hogan held the belt for like 4 years in like the like Hulkamania's boom period, and Brett like he did a great job, but he was a champion during a time when they were like desperately needing to build people. And as I said, he did an admirable job. He put on great matches. He was definitely the champion of that era. A lot of people say he was kind of like the face of that era after Hogan left, but he wasn't like the guy like Hogan was, and he didn't get 4 year title reigns, and you know Hogan basically transcended wrestling into like pop culture and putting it into the mainstream, and it was while he was champion. So in terms of being a champion, I think it's like no surprise to anyone that Hogan has gone this far and could be a potential winner for the tournament in general.
Right. Like in the grand
Yeah,
scheme of things, it kind of went Hulk Hogan, the big guy, dip a little down with Bret Hart, shoot back up for Austin, dip a little down with Triple H, shoot back up with John Cena. Now we're in like another kind of not like murky field, but now we're in like we've got CM Punk, we've got Sheamus, we still have John Cena, we've still got Randy Orton. We're like that
yeah,
transitional phase.
yeah. But if you've noticed, like at least I have, that in like the last portion of this year, like they're kind of winding down a little bit. Like they're kind of not in the forefront of the main event. It seems kind of very transitional. Like
Right.
in the next 3 years, we're going to be seeing a lot of guys getting called up and getting the big pushes, while guys like Cena, Punk, Orton, the guys who are kind of carrying the company right now, kind of take the lesser role.
2013
While
is
they
going to be
like
an interesting year.
yeah, it will be an interesting year because a lot of great talent's been called up, and I want to see what they're going to do with their roster. Like this is a roster that's so thin, but they have all the talent in the world in their like developmental farm. So you bring up the right people, you push the right people, and by the right people, I mean the right people like Damien Sandow.
Right.
I do like what they're doing with the Shield faction. That'll be very interesting going into the next year, like doing stuff like that. So I'm not the biggest Ryback fan, but I see the appeal. You know, so it's very, very similar. But yeah, Bret Hart was kind of like the champion during, kind of like what CM Punk is doing now, but like is the face pretty much.
Right.
You know,
And another person who loses to the big gun, Shawn Michaels loses to Steve Austin, 18-7. No
Yeah,
surprises there.
yeah, like the similar scenario. Although Shawn was kind of champion during Brett's era too. They kind of like traded the title in like the top spot between the
Right.
two of them, and then Austin kind of became a bigger star than the both of them. And Brett went to WCW. That's beside the point. Yeah, Austin helped like put another kickstart back into wrestling and make it awesome again. Gave it another boom period, and it was all because of him, pretty much. Some could argue the NWO and WCW, but in Austin's peak, Raw was beating like Nitro in the ratings, and
Right.
he didn't need to be champion during all the time. When he was champion, it was a very big deal, and his feuds with Vince McMahon are legendary, and a lot of those had to do with him not wanting him to be champion. So
Yeah,
it
it
is
really
obvious, like
revolved
Shawn,
around it.
yeah, entirely around it. And then Shawn's like only really good title reign was one the first one when he beat Bret Hart at WrestleMania 12, and he held it throughout like a portion of the year, and ended up he did drop it to Sid, didn't he?
Yeah, the Survivor Series.
Only to win it like right back, but
Yeah, right back at the Royal Rumble, and then get rid of it like 2 weeks later.
didn't he have to get rid of it because he lost his smile or something like that? Anyway.
Right. And Undertaker loses to The Rock, 18-6. Not a real surprise there either, for the same
Yeah.
kind of reasons. I mean, Undertaker's always been a real solid guy that you can throw the title on, but never the guy to put the title on.
Yeah, he's he's kind of like Triple H without the massive ego.
Yeah,
He's
Triple H
like
is helpful.
guy. Yeah. He's the guy who's a big enough star that does decent for ratings, and you can put a world title on him when your roster was lacking or big stars are injured. But he wasn't ever like the guy, or he never drew massive numbers, which The Rock did. I don't think Rock was as big as Austin at his peak, because both kind of came up around the same time. I think Austin was by far the bigger star in the Attitude Era. But even now, since becoming a movie star and coming back, there's no doubt that The Rock is definitely cemented himself as one of like the biggest names in wrestling history. So that's a lot for Undertaker to kind of
It's a big hump to get over.
And that's just talking from a career perspective. But I think even a lot of Rock's title reigns are better than Undertaker's, or at least more memorable. And I think that's what we're going for here is like, what title reign do you remember the best, or who do you think was the best while they held that championship?
Right.
And Rock's title reigns I thought were better. So it's no surprise to me that he has moved on in this tournament, which is good.
Right.
Good fun.
That means our final four, and then our little wild card on the side. It's CM Punk against Hulk Hogan and Steve Austin against The Rock. And the way that this goes with the wild card, different from the wild card of the Hottest Divas and Knockouts tournament, where it was you have to vote for who you could get for this triple threat match, and then the triple threat for that, and it was all kind of fucking crazy, but fun.
50 Shades of Crazy.
If that was one end of the scale of chaotic, this is the incredible opposite, where we had one uneven amount. There was an odd number of people for this tournament, so I needed one person off to the side, and who better to put off to the side than Vince McMahon? And not going to just cheat him out of it and say that he doesn't deserve the potential to win the tournament. I mean, nobody's going to fucking vote for him, but it wouldn't be fair. I figured I would just use him as the wild card. So one of the votes here is, should Vince McMahon replace any of these people as somebody in the finals? Now, right now, he's the vote right now is going that all four of these are better, which I expected. And if it doesn't happen like that, then holy shit.
But got a lot of fans. Holy shit.
But there's actually 4 votes for him to replace CM Punk, which I find funny.
That's insulting to my intelligence, but nonetheless.
There's 4 for Punk, 1 for Hogan, and 12 for nobody.
For absolutely not.
Right. So more than likely Vince McMahon. Or actually, there's 13 now for nobody.
Thank God.
More than likely, you're gonna see Vince McMahon not move on, and it's going to be the winners of these two matches, which first up, CM Punk against Hulk Hogan. I voted for John Cena last round, so I have John Cena against Hulk Hogan, and the main reason I voted for Hulk Hogan over John Cena was if you look at they both had long reigns, they both were the face of the company, they both were, the same kind of characters and all
Yeah, I
this,
can kind of see where you're going with this.
but
It's kind of
who's
Hogan did it on a grander scale.
yeah,
You
Hogan did it.
know?
Hogan did it on a grander scale where I mean he even had Pasta Mania and shit, and John Cena doesn't have that. And Pasta Mania didn't kill his
Fruity
career.
Pebbles.
Well, the Fruity Pebble thing, yeah. But if you look at the two, who's the one that during this long "I'm the guy at the top" thing didn't get booed? And that was Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, and
So
and on top of that, Hogan's reigns were longer.
right,
At least like the initial birth of Hulkamania reign, and that made wrestling relevant and mainstream. And he carried the company and basically the industry on his back during that 4-year title reign. That in and of itself is quite a feat,
right,
and a lot more than what John Cena's done. Like Cena ended up kind of becoming the guy when they needed to push new faces to the top, and wrestling was still mainstream. Like it wasn't like he had to reinvent it or help it get out of the gutter. It was still going relatively fine. Whereas Hogan took something like WrestleMania,
put it on the map.
could have bombed and everything could have just fell in the shitter, and
Right.
he helped it rise, and that was all due to his title reign and the people he fought and the feuds he had. And that's definitely I voted for Hogan myself, so Punk's year-long reign is awesome. I don't think anybody ever expected him to hold the title this long and still have it. It's obvious that they have the big Rock program coming up, but to compare this to what Hogan did in the 80s, it's not comparable at all. Hogan wins by far.
Right. So if I voted for John Cena over CM Punk and Hulk Hogan over John Cena, by default, I got to vote for Hulk Hogan over CM Punk.
Absolutely.
But you tell me which one's going to put on a better match. Of course, it's going to be CM Punk. Even injured, he would put on a better match than Hulk Hogan. Right now, Hulk Hogan's winning 10-8, so that's really a tough call. But to me, it's really just a matter of if CM Punk wins this against Hulk Hogan, then the winner of the next match wins the tournament. I don't think CM Punk's winning the tournament. But if Hulk Hogan wins, then then it's going to be a little undecided. But the other two, Steve Austin and The Rock, that's a toughie. But I went with Austin because to me, even though The Rock is that guy who is, he's transcended into movies and all that, and it's because he's such a great entertainer and everything, he probably could have gotten away with the same popularity without being champion as much. Whereas Austin, he kind of needed to be the guy at the top because of what we were saying earlier, the whole McMahon thing, and that Rebel Against the Company thing is kind of nothing without the championship. So Steve Austin, he's responsible for that boost back into the mainstream, whereas The Rock rode that wave a little more and capitalized more on it, but he wouldn't have made that boom Austin did, and he did it with his championship reign.
Yeah, it was after Rock. It was after Austin beat Shawn for the title, pretty much, and 316 finally won the championship, and Rock basically got his big push from being the corporate champion that Vince wanted to basically take out Austin when Austin was at his peak.
Right, it was
so that just
The Rock
kind of goes to
depended on
show.
Austin.
Yeah. It kind of helped to make him a bigger star out of it by feuding with D-Star, over the championship. So it just goes to show who is a little bit more important in terms of being the champion at the time. Like Austin's he's definitely one of, if not the greatest superstar of all time. So for me, it's pretty biased, but I definitely pick Austin. He was the definitive champion of the Attitude Era, and I don't think anybody can say otherwise.
And right now,
and I like The Rock, but
Yeah,
Here,
I'm
I
a
think
big
he's
fan of
got
The Rock.
to take the loss. You know.
Yeah, when you're at the semifinals, I mean, unless you lose against Vince McMahon, it's really not, hard to say,
Yeah.
oh, I lost against Steve Austin against, all the other people that I've beaten.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I love CM Punk, but I'm not going to compare his title reign to what Hulk Hogan's reign did for an entire industry. Just like I'm a huge fan of The Rock, but his title reign didn't help an entire industry like giving the belt to Steve Austin did.
Right.
They're just two huge boom creating circumstances that, like the people are fair competition in terms of talent, but in the end, it's probably got to come down to Hogan and Austin, just basically for what their championship reigns did to wrestling. And yes, championship reigns. Like these guys didn't just do this. Becoming stars is a big thing, but giving them the ball was kind of what really got people invested. And Austin and Hogan, in my opinion, did that better than everybody else in this tournament. For
Yeah, I'm
business
really
sake,
hoping that
anyway.
it comes down to Hogan and Austin. And I think it should.
Yeah, the two biggest icons of the two biggest eras in wrestling, just going to see who's the best champion of all time. It'll be an interesting poll if that's the way it works out. So we can hope.
Yep. So next week we'll tell you the final results and who is in the actual finals of the tournament. And then, of course, next week we'll have the finals, and the week afterward it'll just be announcing who the winner is. And then I haven't decided yet what we're going to do as far as if we're going to do another tournament or if we're going to move on to a different type of topic, because I'm not really happy with a lot of how much more popular the Hottest Divas tournament was compared to this one. I know that it wasn't going to be as popular,
fans, jeez.
but I figured it would take a dip down, but I didn't think it would be as considerable as it was. So, doesn't really. It's a lot of extra work to do a tournament out there, and I don't know if I'm up for doing another one immediately, especially when we have the awards coming up and the Royal Rumble.
Much going on in the next month or two. It's crazy.
Right. So I'm going to start figuring that out a little bit, and I'll update you guys on that next week. Make sure to vote while you can, as the polls shut off, as they always do, Tuesday at midnight. And we'll see if it comes down to Hogan and Austin, or if for some reason Vince McMahon pulls out a win. And
oh, yeah.
Part 4, we will talk about the TNA Final Resolution pay-per-view predictions, and that should be it for episode 58.